after the game last night, I want to play some of Mike McDaniel. And he's in a tough spot here because, as Peter said, he's limited by the quality of the information he's getting from team physician and the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant. Mike McDaniel isn't a doctor. And Mike McDaniel ultimately is responsible for the team. Now, I did raise this point last night. The owner's suspended, so the person ultimately responsible for the team isn't even there. I don't know who has the ultimate call on whether or not Tua Tagovailoa plays in the game, but let's assume it's the head coach who's in charge of the team. Here's McDaniel last night being peppered with questions about why Tua was playing and whether he did indeed suffer a head injury on Sunday.
That was an emotional moment. That is not part of the deal that anyone signs up for, even though you know it's a possibility in football to have something that you have to get taken off on a stretcher. All of his teammates, myself, we were all very, very concerned. So the best news that we could get is that everything is checked out, that he didn't have anything more serious than a concussion. He'll be flying back with us here on the plane. Yeah, otherwise we would have reported him having a head injury. I mean, that's why the NFL has these protocols, and there's not, like every single NFL game that is played, there's an independent specialist that specializes in the specialty of brain matter. So, for me, as long as I'm coaching here, if there's I'm not going to fudge that whole situation. If there's any sort of inclination that someone has a concussion, they go into the concussion protocol, and it's very strict. If people don't vary or stray, we don't mess with that. Never have, and as long as I'm the head coach, that will never be an issue that you guys have to worry about.
That you maybe should have done or could have done differently after he went down the first time?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If I would have, that would be irresponsible in the first place, and I shouldn't be in this position. I don't think that an injury from last week made him fall the same way this week. But yeah, I do not have any, absolutely zero patience for or will ever put a player in a position to, for them to be in harm's way.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I want to say something about what he said near the end, and this is one of the dangers of speaking extemporaneously. The idea that the injury from last week made him fall a certain way last night, that makes no sense whatsoever, and I love Mike McDaniel. But you got to be careful when you're speaking extemporaneously on a sensitive topic like this. This isn't about whether or not the injury on Sunday contributed to what happened last night. This is about whether or not the guy was playing with a head injury that was undiagnosed. And he said at one point early in the clip we played, if he had a head injury, we would have said so. Well, they did say so. He was initially listed as questionable to return to the game with a head injury. That was the official disclosure from the Dolphins during the game last Sunday against the Bills. So, look, he's in a tough spot because, again, he's only as good as the information he gets. And he said there's an independent brain specialist. This is the question that I vow to drill down on. Hey, league office, get ready. You're going to get an email from me. It's going to be a long one with a lot of questions as to who these people are, who hires them, who evaluates them, who pays them, how they get the job, how they keep the job, what the factors are in paying them and keeping them, in hiring new ones and getting rid of them, all of those things. I'm going to ask a long list of questions, Peter, because I think that's the new focal point. How independent are these folks? How unaffiliated are they really? Whose interests are they serving? We all have somebody we serve. We all have somebody that we know we have to keep happy. Who are the people or persons or person that the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant has to keep happy so they remain employed in that position? I think that is part of what we need to do going forward as in our capacity. As, we're not necessarily stewards of the game, but we're people who are responsible for posing tough questions to the stewards of the game.
I think you should copy me on that email. I want to read the fuming Florio.
All right.
But I guess I would say about the process that's in place right now is that I think the process is well-meaning. But I also think, and you can't account for everything, okay? But my feeling is the reason why I call this a seminal moment at the start of the show, because I do believe this is a seminal moment for the National Football League and for Commissioner Roger Goodell, for all 32 owners, for all 32 head coaches, and for all 1,696 players. The reason it's a seminal moment is that there are times when you see something that truly is wrong, and you can't fall back on, okay, this is the process we have to correct what went wrong. The process didn't correct what was wrong. So now you need to add in another step on the ladder. And this step, you may need to add 3 steps. But the first step that must be added is any time that a player has gross mental instability or is wobbly or appears to be punch drunk, that player's day is over. And that, to me, is not an easy fix. I don't. Nothing about this is easy. But that has to be the first thing that happens here. And then after that, I do think there need to be an independent group of the best concussion specialists in the United States. There needs to be a summit with them, with the NFL. They've got to spend some money on this, and they've got to basically look at everything about the NFL's process and figure out, is there anything that can be done to improve it?
You know, that's an excellent point. And for me, the things that stand out are, should there be an automatic disqualification? Not that that's the right term, because the player did nothing to deserve to be sidelined, but an automatic, for their own good, for the player's own good, for the sport's own good, you will miss one game after you've been diagnosed with a concussion for an injury that happens during that game, especially on a short week. Is there some hard and fast rule? Can we eliminate some of these loopholes? And also taking a closer look, as we've said, at the people responsible for determining whether or not the loopholes will be exploited. How independent is the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant? These are all things that the NFL must explore for the good of the game, for the good of the players, and to ensure that maybe lower levels of the sport do indeed take more steps to emulate what's happening in the NFL. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.